This week on ANN, advocating for the end of a cultural practice that scars millions of young girls.
Adventist churches serve as literacy centers in El Salvador.
And remembering the first female seminary professor.
These stories and more are coming up.
This is ANN, a service of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church. Thanks so much for joining us this week.
First in the news, the Adventist Church is among faith groups and non-government organizations and other groups working to raise awareness of female genital mutilation, or FGM, on a day the international human rights community has set aside to advocate for zero tolerance toward the custom. FGM is a cultural practice in parts of Africa and Asia that often leave young girls battling infection, scarring, chronic pain, and infertility. The World Health Organization estimates that 140 million women worldwide are victims, most in sub-Saharan and Northeast Africa. In Kenya, the Adventist Church runs a girls' rescue home that offers a safe alternative to traditional coming-of-age ceremonies. In Germany last year, an Adventist hospital opened Europe's first holistic center to help restore victims of FGM. The Desert Flower Center in Berlin offers counseling for victims and surgery to repair damage caused by FGM. The Adventist Hospital opened the center in partnership with Waris Diri. The Somali model underwent FGM at age 5 and now serves as an international activist and United Nations representative against the ritual.
We do all we can to educate communities where this is a cultural practice. One of the things which we do specifically is we go into villages in these countries to see how we can assist, how we can educate, and how we can get this problem to actually stop.
A literacy project coordinated by the Adventist Church in El Salvador has reduced the country's illiteracy rate from 17% to 13%. Adventist partnered with the government and other organizations to hold literacy courses in hundreds of communities across the Central American country. Thousands of graduates held up their certificates at a recent celebration in San Salvador. One of the graduates is a mayor from the state of San Miguel. He is now advocating for greater emphasis on education in his community. Another graduate says literacy opens doors to better paying jobs. Each graduate also received a Bible, a chance to practice newfound skills while learning about God. Church leaders in El Salvador say they want each of the country's 930 Adventist churches to begin serving as community literacy centers this year.
Adventist schools in West Indonesia are serving as shelters in the wake of a series of major volcanic eruptions that displaced more than 25,000 people and left mountain communities mired in ash and mud. Mount Sinabung in North Sumatra has erupted intermittently since September, with activity intensifying this year. Local sources say lava has flowed continuously since mid-January. 3 of the 37 Adventist churches near the volcano withstood damage in the latest series of eruptions. One local pastor said the full extent of the damage is hard to assess because the eruptions haven't stopped. So far, Adventist schools are accommodating an estimated 700 displaced people. Church leaders say medicine, blankets, clothing, and clean water are all urgently needed.
Adventist health experts in England are saying a balanced diet could have prevented the tragic death of a malnourished baby. The baby's parents pled guilty in a British court last month to charges of manslaughter. The couple had subjected the 5-month-old to a strict diet for what they said were religious reasons. Because the couple had former ties to the Adventist Church, the incident raised questions in the media over the appropriate understanding of Adventist dietary recommendations. Church health leaders say the family was not practicing the recommended Adventist diet and were likely swayed by outside influences. The church does not support extreme, unbalanced, or non-evidence-based diets.
Students and colleagues of the first female professor at the Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary are remembering her legacy. Leona Running, who was an expert in biblical languages, died on January 22. She was 97 years old. Running held master's degrees in Greek and Hebrew and was the first woman to earn a doctorate in ancient Near Eastern studies. She taught biblical languages for nearly 6 decades at the seminary, first in Tacoma Park and later at its current location on the campus of Andrews University in the U.S. state of Michigan. Running retired at the age of 65 but continued to teach Egyptian and other languages in the seminary until 2002.
Last March, hundreds of thousands of Adventist young people skipped church to be the sermon in a global demonstration of practical Christianity. They visited shut-ins, donated blood, and made breakfast for law enforcement officers. Others transformed their church into a shelter for abused women. Organizers say Global Youth Day was a historically unifying moment for Adventist young people worldwide. Earlier today, I sat down with Gilbert Kanji to find out what's planned for this year's event. Thank you for joining us, Gilbert.
My pleasure.
Now, the second annual Global Youth Day is planned for March 15th. What plans do you have this year?
Well, bigger and better, meaning more people involved and us getting closer to our vision of engaging youth globally for service. I must tell you that already 2013 was a surprise. We had no idea what the outcome was going to be. But as it turned out, it became the single largest Adventist event in history. We had 4 million people engaged with our Facebook page, and this time is going bigger even still. We had 3 hours of live uplink. 2014 will see a 24-hour Hope channel and internet relay across the time zones of the world.
Wow, that's amazing. As you mentioned, social media was an integral part of 2013. How are you planning to use social media this year?
Yeah, we started our campaign already in January, an intensive Facebook campaign, and so far we have about 20,000 people who have liked our page. But next week we are releasing a special app that has been designed dedicated to Global Youth Day, and our webpage dedicated to Global Youth Day will be up as well. So people will be able to interact with us there, post their pictures, their videos, and all this will be mobilized to make Global Youth Day even bigger than it was last year.
Great. What does Global Youth Day say about the Adventist Church's priorities?
Well, first of all, I am very grateful to administration because none of this comes without funding and finances. And the generosity and the openness of administration in making this possible says something about the church leadership in terms of prioritizing youth in its direction. Number two, it says something about when you give young people a chance, an opportunity to stand up and be counted, they will go beyond your expectation. And more importantly, I think it gets us closer to our dream. The dream is to recapture the sense of our young people belonging to a global movement, to a global army that we talk about. And Global Youth Day is one way in which we are achieving that, and I'm so grateful to God for that.
Thank you, Gilbert, and all the best to you.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, a preview of the February issue of Adventist World.
A child wondering where her next meal will come from. A woman without a home, forced to sleep in the street. A forgotten grandparent with no familiar face to brighten their day. A family unable to care for their everyday needs. People that we pass every day but have stopped seeing. It's a human problem. Today or 2,000 years ago, in Uganda or America, China or Brazil. Instead of passing by, what would happen if we, Seventh-day Adventist youth, stopped and helped? If each of us in our own corner of the world reached out to those in need and made a difference in being the hands and feet of Jesus. On Sabbath, March 16th, 2013, we tried an experiment. Instead of going to church, we, the Adventist youth, went out and lived the sermon. In our towns, in our countries, in our world. In 24 hours, 8 million youth made an impact in others' lives, bringing the gospel to our communities through acts of kindness. This year, we can do more. We spend most of our Sabbath studying what it means to be followers of Christ. It's time to take one Sabbath and live out the sermon. This year, we can touch a life. We can transform a community. We can change the world.
Welcome back. Now let's turn to Steve Chavez for a look at this month's issue of Adventist World.
The spotlight for this month's Adventist World is on our friends in Australia, with the cover story, Service to Others Really Matters. Written by assistant editor Sandra Blackmer, the article highlights the important work done by college and university students to the underserved communities in Australia's outback. Called STORMCO, an acronym for Service to Others Really Matters Company, the initiative sends 15 to 20 young adults for a period of a week to 10 days to communities where they provide recreation for youngsters, health seminars for adults, service and maintenance projects, and personal testimonies at weekly social events. STORMCO is so popular that communities look forward to being visited by Adventist young adults each year. A companion piece in this issue, also written by Sandra Blackmer, is Sharing Health and Hope. Adventist-owned Sanitarium Foods is the largest, most widely known food production company in the South Pacific, with a reputation similar to that of Kellogg's or Nestle's in other parts of the world. Blackmer's article describes how, in addition to providing low-cost or no-cost breakfast to millions of kids in Australia and New Zealand, Sanitarium Foods operates a full-service vegetarian cafe in a prime location in downtown Brisbane, where Adventist health principles are not only promoted, but practiced. Before I go, I have to remind you not to miss the other great articles in this month's Adventist World, also available at adventistworld.org. Until next month, happy reading.
The upcoming edition of the Adventist Mission DVD follows the work of global mission pioneers at the front lines of evangelism worldwide. Ricky Oliveras met one pioneer in rural India.
I recently traveled to the country of India for the first time. I love filming stories in countries like India. The bright colors, the food, and the people make trips like this fun. But what I was most impressed with is the way that God is working in this part of the world. I met a global mission pioneer named Prabhat and spent some time with him. He lives in a simple rural village in a simple rural part of India. His family gets up early in the morning to take care of their animals and crops, and after a few hours of working, they have worship together before Prabhat rides away on his bicycle to visit people. He doesn't have the luxury of driving a car, so he'll ride for hours to get to another village. He visits people in their homes to teach them about Jesus, and most of these people have never even heard the name of Jesus before. They love to hear stories from the Bible and can't wait for Prabhat's next visit. As I was filming, I could see that people really appreciated his visits, and some have even accepted Jesus into their lives. It showed me that people are hungry for God's Word, and global mission pioneers are on the front lines of sharing the message. There are hundreds of global mission pioneers like Prabhat serving all around the world today. Keep an eye out for Global Mission Pioneer stories on the next Adventist Mission DVD, which now goes by the new name Mission 360 DVD. Thanks for watching.
Guide magazine columnist Rich Aguilera studies nature to get to know God better. This month, he takes a closer look at snowflakes.
Oh, hey, Rich Aguilera here. Don't you just love snow? It's so cold and refreshing, and you can throw it at people. Whoa, whoa, that was close. Was that you? Wait a second, I got an idea. If we're gonna talk about snow, I know exactly where we need to go. Come on. Now we're talking. Skiing is the perfect place to talk about snow. Snow is basically frozen water falling from the sky. It's neat watching the snowflakes fall and thinking about how far they've actually fallen. Snowflakes fall about 2 or 3 miles per hour. That means each one of these little snowflakes has been falling for hours. I guess the snowflakes are just taking in the scenery. Let's do the same, come on. You know, most snowflakes, when you look at them close up, they have 6 sides. That means they are hexagons. And they crystallize into amazing designs too. I'm glad that somebody invented skiing because it's a great way to enjoy the snow God made. You want to get to know God better? Study His nature. See ya!
Still ahead, how to protect your children from prescription drugs. We'll tell you how.
But up next, the fossil record offers new clues on origins.
Not long ago, I was traveling in New York City, and I saw a sign on the subway. It had all the numbers for the code and said, the law says, don't spit on the floor. Now, it's amazing that I go to a lot of buildings and I don't see any signs that say don't spit on the floor. I guess the signs are there because they need them there to help regulate behavior, because you probably wouldn't want to have a lot of people spitting on the floor. Do you know that God has given us gracious instruction to help us live in the best way? That instruction that comes in the Bible, in the Ten Commandments, in the life of Jesus, shows us the best way to live. But you know, God doesn't want us just to look at that instruction and say, oh, I guess I better do it because God said so. He wants us to recognize that that really is the best way to live, and He puts His Spirit in us so that we come to want to live the way that would be best for us. Now, would you rather live in a place where they have to put signs on the wall to say don't spit on the floor, or would you rather live in a place where people just don't do that because they really don't want to? Wouldn't it be nice if we could live in a place where everyone accepted God's gracious instruction and lived the way that He knows is best for us?
Welcome back. Variations in the fossil record of humans might puzzle anthropologists, but the findings are consistent with the biblical record of history. Tim Standish has this report.
Just about every natural history museum has a set of skulls, including some like these. If you're a biology student like me, you may have had to memorize the names of the various species each skull represents: Homo neanderthalensis, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, and so on. Each one a clue to the evolutionary origins of human beings from an ape ancestor. Or maybe not. Ancient skulls like this were possibly the most important scientific discovery relating to origins of 2013. These skulls, or rather those skulls, came from Dmanisi in the country of Georgia and were found in such close proximity that they seem to have been part of the same group. Yet they show significant variation in shape. Skulls with similar variations, when found individually, have been classified as different species. But the evidence from Dmanisi seems to indicate they're all one species. What are the take-home lessons from evidence like the Dmanisi skulls? One is that the science of anthropology can be volatile, with single discoveries profoundly changing the way evidence is viewed. Another is that the fossil record of humans, and yes, these skulls are probably from humans, exhibit a pattern similar to the fossil records of other organisms, with greater variability evident in the past than we see today. At least on the surface, this is the opposite of what Darwinism predicts. Finding fossils grouped together and exhibiting so much variation calls into question the practice of arranging fossils, human or otherwise, into assumed evolutionary sequences over time. Finally, it's interesting to note that while evidence like the Dmanisi skulls may upset some ideas about human evolution, they're not inconsistent with the biblical record of history.
Adventist tech and media experts are gearing up for the 10th annual Global Adventist Internet Network, or GAIN, conference next week. Williams Costa Jr. has a preview in this week's Tech Corner.
I would like to invite you to participate on the next GAIN conference that will happen in Baltimore, February 12 to 16. This is a great conference that all the technicians, content providers, IT people, communicators get together to discuss, to dream how can we use technology to share the good news of salvation. Some people have asked, well, this is for specialized people. No, it's for you. Many people come straight from the churches and institutions to this meeting, and they have been blessed. They have been inspired with so many wonderful ideas. If you are not registered, I encourage you to register right now. Look to the information in the screen, and I hope that we'll meet together and have this great, wonderful time participating on the next GAIN conference.
Is your medicine cabinet full of expired antibiotics and painkillers? Well, our resident doctor has tips this week on keeping the contents organized and up to date.
I don't know when you last had a look inside your medicine cabinet. In there, you might find some very interesting things. You might find some buried treasures. Treasures? Did I say that? You'll find bottles of medicine which have not been completed. Some antibiotics, pain medications, you name it, they're probably sitting there. What you need to do is you need to get into that medicine cabinet. You need to look at the dates that are on those bottles and containers, see whether they are expired or not. And of course, there's another very important thing. If you get an antibiotic, for example, take the complete course of treatment. If you've got bottles of medication in your medicine cabinet that are old and expired, incompleted courses of antibiotics, throw them away. They become useless, they become dangerous, and in fact, if you have toddlers and children around, it's best to make sure that your medicine cabinet is out of reach, well closed, kept cool, kept up to date. Make sure that you don't have unnecessary poisons around your home. It's up to you as to how you manage your life, and it's very important to make sure that your medicine cabinet is a place where healing can possibly take place, but you never want it to be the source of poisoning and destruction. Go and check it for yourself. Do it now.
18 million Seventh-day Adventists are connected worldwide through faith and community. A new video illustrates how.
We are people, and we love to get connected. We connect as families because of birth. We connect as friends because we click. And we connect as communities because we care. Seventh-day Adventists are people who connect in communities called congregations, which in turn connect to form conferences, who connect together to form unions, divisions, and the General Conference. Why do we connect? It starts with a connection to the Creator, who invites us on a spiritual journey. When we journey together, we can help each other along the way. This journey is a journey of a lifetime, and as we learn and grow, life becomes filled with meaning and purpose. Our greatest joy is in helping others along the way. Wherever you are on your journey, we believe that we have something to offer that can make your life more whole. So the next time you see a Seventh-day Adventist, remember, you're not looking at someone who stands alone. They are connected to a world church that has 18 million members, gathered in 13 divisions, comprised of 122 unions, formed by 600 conferences, serving in 140,000 congregations in 208 countries, who worship in 924 languages, and they all want to connect with you.
Now let's turn to David Trim for a look at Adventist history. This week, diplomacy paves the way for an Adventist hospital in Libya.
This week in Adventist history is one of important first arrivals and developments in mission work. On February 2, 1917, American missionary W.E. Baxter and his wife arrived in Caracas, Venezuela, where they found 10 faithful members won by literature evangelism. Baxter subsequently founded the first Seventh-day Adventist church in Venezuela in Caracas. Also on February 2, but 38 years later, in 1955, another American missionary, Dr. Roy S. Cornell, arrived in Benghazi in Libya, where he helped to make preparations for opening an Adventist hospital, the fruit of patient diplomatic efforts by Neil C. Wilson, then president of the Nile Union. In May 1956, Cornell opened the Benghazi Adventist Hospital, but he contracted polio in 1957, and that November, 1957, paralysis set in. Dr. Cornell had to be placed in an iron lung and was evacuated back to America in a U.S. military transport aircraft. On February 6, in 1916, the South American Union Conference was reorganized and became the South American Division. Two American missionaries, Oliver Montgomery and Will Williams, were elected President and Secretary-Treasurer, respectively. The headquarters was then in Buenos Aires, Argentina, but subsequently moved to Montevideo in Uruguay, and later to Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, where it is located today. That was this week in Adventist history.
Thanks for watching ANN. Please join us next week for more news from the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
In the meantime, find us on Facebook. You can connect with other Adventists worldwide and find links to more stories, photos, and videos. Just visit Facebook/Adventist News.
Our good news for this week comes from 2 Corinthians 4, verse 2. The passage says, "But we have renounced disgraceful, underhanded ways. We refuse to practice cunning or to tamper with God's word. But by the open statement of the truth, we would commend ourselves to everyone's conscience in the sight of God."
That's our program for this week, and remember, you can always visit news.adventist.org for daily news and videos. Until next time, God bless.
Take care.